Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Tia Miranda and thank you for joining me. What I like to do is cover cases I rarely see covered or that color me intrigued. Today's case took place in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2007. This is the tragic case of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Channon Gill Christian was born on April 29, 1985 in Nacogdoches, Texas. Channon and her family moved from Louisiana to Tennessee in 1997. She graduated from Farragut High School in 2003 and was majoring in sociology at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where she planned on graduating from in December 2007. Shannon's mother, Dina, said, quote, "She was a typical girl. I mean, she wasn't perfect, nobody's perfect. She never gave us any trouble and always did well in school. She was beautiful, but what made her even more beautiful was the fact that she wasn't stuck on herself. She was a beautiful woman with a beautiful soul, and she was my best friend." Hugh Christopher Short Newsom was born in Knoxville, Tennessee on September 21, 1983. Chris played baseball for the Halls High School Red Devils and graduated in 2002. He attended Pellissippi State Technical College, where he became a carpenter. Chris's mother said everyone that knew Chris was his friend. He had a smile that everyone just loved. She said Chris enjoyed golf, fishing, tennis, and baseball. She also stated that he was so in love with Channon, and Channon was said to be just as much in love with him, according to the family. Channon and Chris were both living at home and had just began dating in November 2006. The couple both loved to golf and would often do so together. Saturday, January 6, 2007, Channon and Chris had planned to go out to dinner and after attend a friend's party. That afternoon, Channon had gone to the apartment complex where her friend Kara lived to get ready. Kara left around 8 p.m. to attend the party while Channon stayed behind to wait for Chris to arrive and pick her up so they could attend together. When Chris arrived, I've seen in some articles say that they decided to stay and watch a movie. However, when they went to leave, they went out to the apartment complex parking lot. And as Chris and Channon were in an embrace, the assailants observed the couple and then decided to attack. The couple were forced into the back of Shannon's SUV at gunpoint. They were then bound with their hands behind their backs and taken to Lamarcus Davidson's home at 2316 Chipman Street. Channon and Chris were both sexually assaulted. Chris is believed to have been sexually assaulted inside Lamarcus Davidson's home. The Knoxville County Acting Medical Examiner stated that Chris had been sexually assaulted by a minimum of one of the perpetrators and sodomized with an object. Chris was then taken to a set of railroad tracks. He was forced to walk barefoot, only wearing a t-shirt and his underwear, to the location where he was murdered. Chris's hands were tied behind his back with his feet bound together. He was blindfolded with a bandana and gagged with a sock. The perpetrators first shot Chris in his neck and back. Chris was still alive, suffering these two shots. The fatal shot came with the muzzle of the gun against his head above his right ear. This shot severed his brainstem. After murdering Chris Newsom, the perpetrator set his body on fire and then returned to Lamarcus Davidson's home. A mangled dog leash found on the hillside near the railroad tracks was believed by prosecutors to have been used to lead Chris to the location of his murder. Chris Newsom died at the age of 23. Channon was being held captive in the home of Lamarcus Davidson. She was mainly kept in the north bedroom of the house. Prosecutors believe Vanessa Coleman held Channon while the others murdered Chris. After the perpetrators returned to the house, Channon Christian was repeatedly beaten and sexually assaulted, enduring hours of sexual torture, sustaining severe head injuries and severe injuries to her mouth and genital area. She had also been sexually assaulted with an object, testified by the medical examiner. Prosecutors believe Channon had been tied to a chair and sexually assaulted orally by Lamarcus Davidson and Latavis Cobbins. Channon suffered extensive hemorrhaging to her head and genitals due to being kicked and beaten. Bruises and carpet burns covered most of her body. Before Channon Christian was killed, in an effort to remove their DNA, they poured bleach down her throat and used it to scrub her body. Channon was bound with strips of bedding and curtains in a hogtied fashion. Her face was covered tightly with a small plastic bag. Channon Christian was then stashed in 5 large trash bags and was placed in fetal position, only wearing her camisole and sweater, in a residential waste disposal unit and covered with sheets. Channon slowly suffocated to death and died with her eyes open. The medical examiner testified Channon Christian passed away between the afternoon of January 7th and January 8th of 2007 at the age of 21. Channon and Chris's absence at the party led friends attempting to reach them by call or text with no response. Around 11 p.m., 2 of Chris's friends drove to the apartment complex parking lot where the couple was carjacked to look for them. They discovered Chris's truck but couldn't locate Shannon's SUV. Dina, Shannon's mother, did not expect Channon home that night. At 12:30 a.m., she called her father Gary to say that she would arrive home by 12:30 a.m. This call was under duress. At 3:30 a.m., Dina became worried, calling Channon with no response. She said, quote, "Channon always called back." Channon didn't show up for work. On January 7, 2006, Shannon's mother Dina and a friend attempted to reach Shannon with no response. Family and friends of the couple began checking local hospitals and filed missing persons reports in hopes of finding Channon and Chris. Shannon's parents, Dina and Gary Christian, requested help from law enforcement, however they were told they would have to search themselves. Shannon's parents also sought help from Shannon's mobile phone provider. They discovered Shannon's phone last pinged at a Cherry Street phone tower. Between 1:30 and 2 a.m. Monday, January 8, 2006, Shannon's family and friends discovered her abandoned Toyota 4Runner while searching the area at Cherry Street. The items missing from Shannon's vehicle included a teddy bear photo she kept in her car, her phone charger, and an iPod. The front seats of the car had been pushed back all the way, which would have been too far for Channon to reach the pedals. Shannon cleaned and maintained her vehicle, yet the floorboards were covered in mud. She kept stickers on the outside of her windows, which had been removed. A pack of Newport cigarettes were found, which neither Chris nor Shannon smoked. An envelope police recovered yielded fingerprint evidence. This evidence led police to Lamarcus Davidson's home, which was 2 blocks from Shannon's vehicle. Shannon's father, Gary, knew something had happened because he had received a phone call where the individual stated something is going on up here at this house by the trash place, Waste Connections. Gary then received another call where the individual stated they thought they'd found her because an ambulance had arrived. On Monday, January 8, 2006, a body found on the railroad tracks was identified as Chris Newsom. Detective Snodderly, who knew Chris through his son, told Hugh Newsom, Chris's father, quote, "It's Chris." Hugh asked how he knew for sure, and Detective Snodderly replied, quote, "I recognized him by his eyes." Chris's father stated after that everything fell apart. Police arrived to the home of Lamarcus Davidson at 2316 Chipman Street, January 9, 2006. The house was unoccupied. While there, they discovered Shannon's body in a garbage can in the kitchen. Lamarcus Davidson's prints were found on the 5 large trash bags used to stash Shannon's body and on a box of garbage bags. Talvis Cobbin's DNA was found on Shannon's mouth, camisole, sweater, and jeans. Lamarcus Davidson's DNA was found on Shannon's genital area and jeans. Inside the home, police discovered many items belonging to Chris and Shannon, including Shannon's purse, clothing, shoes, camera, iPod, and photos. The photos recovered had been destroyed. Several of the items recovered contained Lamarcus Davidson's fingerprints. The items found from Shannon's vehicle were shoved into garbage bags. The police asked Eric Boyd for information on Lamarcus Davidson's whereabouts after learning of calls made between the two. Lamarcus Davidson was arrested on January 11, 2006 at the vacant house Eric Boyd had pointed them to. While there, Lamarcus Davidson was found to be wearing Chris's 9.5 Nike Shocks, which were too small, and a .22 caliber high-standard revolver. Lamarcus Davidson was arrested and interrogated about the murders. During interrogation, he told 5 different stories to police. First claiming Friday he left the house and knew nothing about what took place in his home during his absence. Later, he told police Talvis Cobbins and George Thomas arrived at his house around 10 p.m. on Friday or Saturday and informed him about the carjacking. Lamarcus stated he saw the victims tied up in the back seat, which he claimed, quote, "I didn't want any part of it," and left to go smoke marijuana. Lamarcus Davidson claimed he returned to the house after 20 minutes to find Shannon, who told him, quote, "She did not want to die." Lamarcus stated he left again to go to use Shannon's SUV to deal drugs, then wiped it clean. He claimed he never went past the living room and never had intercourse with Shannon. George Thomas and Vanessa Coleman were arrested in Lebanon, Kentucky on January 11, 2006. Police seized a purse which contained Shannon's cosmetic bag, change purse, and overnight bag. Police also seized a computer that George Thomas and Talvis Cobbins had been following the case on. Talvis Cobbins gave a statement to investigators claiming he, Lamarcus Davidson, and Eric Boyd drove to an apartment complex to meet a girl. He stated they saw the SUV with a female inside when they'd arrived, and she was speaking to a male. Talvis stated, quote, "Lamarcus and Eric basically carjacked them and ordered him to drive back to the house." Talvis claimed once they'd arrived, the woman, which was Channon Christian, was taken into the house by Lamarcus Davidson, and Eric Boyd drove away with the man, which was Chris Newsom. Talvis stated that later when Eric Boyd returned, the male was no longer with him. Talvis denied having intercourse with Channon also. Vanessa Coleman admitted to being present during the crimes, however she claimed to be held hostage by the other suspects. After Talvis Cobbins, Vanessa Coleman, and George Thomas arrests, a journal was recovered that belonged to Vanessa Coleman. Journal entry dated January 9, 2006 stated, "Last night was one of a kind. We stayed with a crackhead that is cool as hell. It snowed a little bit, but it's already melted. Let's talk about adventures. I've had one hell of an adventure since I've been in the Big TN. It's a crazy world these days, but I love the fun adventures and lessons that I've learned. It's going to be a long and interesting year." A forensic document examiner verified the handwriting matched that of Vanessa Coleman's. George Thomas, born January 23, 1983, LaTalvis Cobbins, born December 20th, 1982, and Lamarcus Davidson, born June 13th, 1981, all received the same 46 charges. Lamarcus Davidson was originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and in August 2006 completed a 5-year sentence on a previous felony conviction for carjacking and aggravated robbery. Davidson was also indicted on a second robbery at a Pizza Hut, which was committed one day after the murders of Channon, Christian, and Christopher Newsom. Vanessa Coleman, born June 29th, 1988, faced 40 Tennessee state charges. Eric Boyd, born February 18, 1972, was arrested in connection with the carjacking. Although he was not indicted by the Knoxville County Grand Jury, Eric Boyd was indicted by a separate federal grand jury on August 23, 2007. On April 16, 2008, Eric Boyd was found guilty in a federal court of being an accessory to a fatal carjacking and failing to report the location of a known fugitive. He was the first suspect to go to trial and wasn't charged with murder. Eric Boyd was sent to a maximum of 18 years in a federal prison. He was incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution in Yazoo County, which is a low-security federal prison in Mississippi. LaTalvis Cobbins was found guilty of the murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom on August 25, 2009. LaTalvis faced the possibility of the death penalty because of his first-degree felony murder conviction. He was found guilty of facilitating the murder of Chris Newsom, but was acquitted of Chris Newsom's sexual assault. On August 26, 2009, he was sentenced to life without parole. October 28, 2009, Lamarcus Davidson was found guilty. The jurors unanimously found Davidson should receive the death penalty on 4 capital charges, 2 first-degree felony murder charges, and 2 premeditated first-degree murder charges. In June 2010, Lamarcus Davidson was sentenced to 80 years for other charges related to the murders. This sentence, along with the death sentences, were to be served consecutively. The Tennessee Supreme Court affirmed Lamarcus Davidson's conviction and death sentences in 2016. In December 2009, George Thomas was found guilty on multiple counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on each of the 4 capital convictions. Vanessa Coleman was granted immunity by federal authorities for testimony in the federal carjacking case. However, the state courts ruled that the federal grant of immunity could not extend to the state charges of murder and sexual assault. Vanessa Coleman was acquitted on May 13, 2010 of first-degree murder, but found guilty on lesser charges. On July 30, 2010, she was sentenced to 53 years. During Vanessa Coleman's sentencing, Shannon's father, Gary Christian, stated, quote, "For me personally, you took my baby. You took my opportunity to say yes to a young man someday. You took my wedding dance away. You took my opportunity to hold her child, my grandbaby." Lamarcus Davidson, LaTalvis Cobbins, George Thomas, and Vanessa Coleman all appealed their convictions. Judge Richard Baumgartner, he was one of the 3 Knoxville criminal court judges, in March 2011 was forced to resign from the bench due to admitting to being addicted to drugs and purchasing prescription meds from convicts. He was also accused of trading legal favors for intercourse during breaks in court sessions. Baumgartner pled to 1 count of official misconduct. The actions he committed could have impaired his ability to conduct trials during his final 2 years on the bench and compromise all the trials of the defendants in this crime. As a result of his actions, Judge Baumgartner was later disbarred. December 1, 2011, Judge Junkhead Blackwood granted new trials to the 4 state defendants after a TBI investigation showed evidence that Judge Baumgartner was likely impaired while presiding over those trials. Judge Blackwood set retrials for between June and November 2012. He also set bail at $1 million for Vanessa, which was the only defendant whose sentence had a possibility for parole. Judge Blackwood denied a change of venue but allowed for potential jurors to be brought in from outside Knoxville County, Tennessee. Due to double jeopardy, the defendants faced at maximum the sentence they'd already received. Lamarcus Davidson was only eligible for capital punishment. Prosecutors stated there was proof Judge Baumgartner was impaired during Vanessa Coleman's trial, but appealed the decision to retrial Lamarcus Davidson, LaTalvis Cobbins, and George Thomas. The decision for retrials was affirmed in a 2-1 decision by the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals on April 13, 2012. The Tennessee Supreme Court overturned Judge Blackwood's ruling of ordering new trials in May 2012 for Lamarcus Davidson, George Thomas, and LaTalvis Cobbins, stating, quote, "Its order should not be construed as condoning or excusing Judge Baumgartner's misconduct." The Tennessee Supreme Court stated that a trial judge's misconduct doesn't necessarily require a new trial unless the misconduct is shown to have affected trial proceedings. After, the cases were sent back to Judge Blackwood to reconsider the motions for new trials. In June 2012, after the Tennessee Supreme Court's ruling, Judge Blackwood again granted new trials for Davidson, Cobbins, and Thomas. Judge Blackwood based his decision on the 13th juror rule. Prosecutors filed to have Judge Blackwood recused from the case after he invoked the 13th juror rule and granted new trials for the defendants. Following Judge Blackwood's recusal, Senior Judge Walter Kurtz was named to oversee the retrials and the decisions to grant them. Retrials for LaTalvis Cobbins and Lamarcus Davidson were denied but granted for George Thomas and Vanessa Coleman. On November 2012, Vanessa Coleman, facing the same charges as the first trial, was convicted by a jury of facilitation of sexual assault and murder of Channon Christian, but not of Christopher Newsom. The convictions were on lesser charges than her initial convictions. The jury was selected more than 300 miles away from Knoxville in Jackson, Tennessee. Vanessa Coleman's lawyers argued she should receive 20 years. Prosecutors, however, asked for the maximum sentence of nearly 50 years. Vanessa Coleman was sentenced to 35 years on February 1, 2013, minus credit for time already served. The Tennessee Court of Criminal Justice Appeals denied her request for a new trial and upheld her sentence in 2014. Judge Thomas T. Woodwall wrote, "The facts at trial showed Vanessa Coleman was in the Chipman Street house for nearly 2 days, where Channon was confined and brutally sexually assaulted before she was tied up, wrapped in 5 plastic trash bags, and stuffed into a garbage can, where she died from asphyxiation." In the journal entries, she described one hell of an adventure in the Big TN and wrote, she, quote, "loved her life." This evidence supports the trial court's finding that Vanessa Coleman is a dangerous offender. She is held at the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center, formerly known as the Tennessee Prison for Women in Nashville, Tennessee. Vanessa was eligible for parole in 2017, and her sentence expires on April 18, 2036. In August 2014, Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom's family were informed that Vanessa's sentence was being reduced by 16 days per month of incarceration, making her eligible for parole consideration in October 2014. However, her parole hearing was rescheduled from October to December. Vanessa Coleman was denied parole at the December 2014 hearing, and the next hearing date was set for December 2020. On December 8, 2020, she went again before a parole board. Channon and Chris's mothers, Dina Christian and Mary Newsom, and Shannon's father, Gary Christian, gave statements opposing parole for Vanessa Coleman. The 7 board members voted unanimously to deny parole for Vanessa Coleman and to ensure she would not be eligible for parole again for 10 years. The retrial for George Thomas ended on May 17, 2013, in a guilty verdict on all 38 counts. He was resentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 51 years by a jury selected from Nashville, Tennessee. LaTalvis Cobbins and George Thomas were originally incarcerated at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2012, the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex opened in Pikeville, Kentucky, and they were transferred there. George Thomas is serving a 50-year sentence at the Northeast Correctional Complex, and his sentence ends May 2053. LaTalvis Cobbins is serving a life sentence without parole at the Northwest Correctional Complex. Lamarcus Davidson was sentenced to death on October 30, 2009, and is serving a sentence at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. Co-defendant George Thomas testified at Eric Boyd's trial. By doing this, George Thomas received his first-degree murder conviction reduced to a second-degree murder conviction, his aggravated rape convictions reduced to aggravated assault, and his sentence reduced from life in prison with the possibility of parole to 50 years with the opportunity to reduce his sentence by up to 15% based on good behavior during incarceration on June 4, 2013. In 2015, the Tennessee Court of Criminal Justice Appeals upheld George Thomas's conviction. In January 2016, he appealed to the United States Supreme Court, but they denied to hear his case. Eric Boyd had been serving his 18-year sentence at Beckley, a federal correctional institution near Beaver, West Virginia, and was eligible for parole in 2022. He was transported from a federal correctional institute in Yazoo County, Mississippi to a Knoxville County jail where he was held on a $1 million bond. Eric Boyd went to trial on state charges in August 2019. Since so much time had passed between the murders and this trial, the jury was impaneled in Knoxville, Tennessee, and not sequestered. 11 years after the murders, on March 20, 2018, a Knoxville County grand jury returned with a 36-count indictment charging Boyd with first-degree felony murder, first-degree premeditated murder, especially aggravated robbery, especially aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape in the murders. The jury found Boyd guilty on nearly all charges, including the premeditated first-degree murder and rape against both victims on August 13, 2019. Also convicted on charges of carjacking, robbery, and kidnapping. Eric Boyd was found guilty of lesser charges on 2 counts. Instead of the especially aggravated armed robbery, the jury found him guilty of aggravated armed robbery. The Knoxville County Criminal Court denied Eric Boyd's request for a new trial. In 2014, as a result of the case, 2 new laws were introduced thanks to the lobbying from the families of the victims. The Chris Newsom Act. This law was introduced to eliminate the need for a judge's signature on a jury's verdict after the delivery of a unanimous verdict. This thus eliminates the 13th juror rule, which stipulated that a judge must validate the jury's verdict. Had such a law been in place during the case, retrials would have been avoided. The Channon Christian Act. This law restricts attorneys and defendants in attempting to portray a victim in a negative light, such as making allegations about behavior. Lamarcus Davidson alleged during trial that Channon and Chris had came to his house to buy drugs. The family felt great pain listening to the defense attorneys question Shannon's character during multiple trials. Due to the laws protecting the accused, the jury wasn't allowed to be informed of Davidson's previous carjacking conviction. This was the felony that happened one day after the murders at a Pizza Hut. Concerning their safety as a result of this crime, the community became more vigilant and more people began purchasing firearms. The community had also started a women's defense class called Women on Target. Waste Connections, which was located next to the house on Chipman Street, bought the property where these atrocities occurred. The house was demolished in October 2008 and replaced with a memorial for Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. There was an outpour of support from the community. They held vigils, fundraisers, and formed many support groups. The families were very appreciative for the support given by the community. The Shannon Gill Christian Foundation memorializes Channon through a golf tournament and scholarship each year. Channon was a senior at the University of Tennessee at the time of her death. The scholarship is awarded to a female Farragut High School student attending the University of Tennessee as Channon Christian did. Dina Christian, Shannon's mom, stated, "Just always remember to tell your children you love them, your family that you love them, because you never know when it's going to be the last time you get to say those words." She said she was grateful enough to get to tell Channon she loved her the day she walked out the door, and her father was able to tell her that night he loved her when she called to check in. She said, "We always let our kids know how much we love them." A Little League baseball tournament is held in Chris's honor each year in the Halls community, and a memorial scholarship is given yearly to a Halls High School student. Chris's parents stated they put a plaque up in his honor and gave a scholarship in his name every year, and that would continue as long as they're here. Chris's mother Mary stated Chris had bought a motorcycle and he rode it all the time. She and his father Hugh were concerned for his safety while riding the bike. 2 weeks before Chris's murder, he called Mary one evening and told her that he had sold the motorcycle. When she asked why, because she knew he loved it, he said, "I want a life." Mary Newsom said Chris really loved life. I don't know if while reading these cases sometimes we genuinely take into consideration the victims and families involved. From Channon or Chris's point of view, it was a nightmare. Could you imagine raising an individual to adulthood or at all and having a total stranger rip that loved one from your life in one sudden action and in such a brutal fashion? The family, while grieving over their child being pulled in and out of court to fight for justice on their behalf. Love for your child is unconditional. Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom lost their lives when their life was just beginning. This was such an unnecessary crime that not only took two beautiful individuals' lives, but also took them away from friends, family, and denied them their futures. Thank you so much for watching my video and listening to this case. If you have any requests, please comment them below, and I'll see you again soon.